Bartenders of Reddit, what is the weirdest thing that you have ever witnessed at your job? Story 1. But naked kid maybe 5 to 6 years old came in. Reactions ranged from WTF to laughter to attempts to help. Kid went straight to this lady, an every night regular, who turned out to be his mom. Apparently he hid in her car and she was too zonked on various substances to notice. Kid was naked because he had literally nothing to wear, I later learned, and their duplex apartment a few blocks away was a vermin-infested hellhole. Mom was a serious addict. Her kid following her to the bar was the impetus that led to him being taken away and her getting sent to rehab. I learned all this after the fact. But the kid walking naked into the bar was definitely among the most unexpected things I've ever seen. Story 2. I once witnessed a woman openly fondling herself, dress hiked up, underwear pulled aside in the middle of a not super busy bar. It was very obvious she wanted people to see. The weird part was, after a barback yelled at her and told to stop or get out, a guy walked up to the barback and said, "Don't talk to my wife like that, this really happened." Story 3. Car plowed into the bar I was working in, coming all the way in, and flipping a pool table on its side, pinned 3 off-duty Applebee's waitresses against the bar. No one was hurt and the woman who was driving tried to order a drink. Story 4. I once served Catman a Mary. Dude had body modifications that were hard not to stare at. He was very friendly. He ordered a blue rare steak and returned it for being overcooked. I told him we can't legally feed you anything more raw than a blue rare steak. He hissed and ordered another drink. Story 5. Used to have a regular who sold her time on Backpage. She loved our queso, so she always had the guys bring her there. What stuck out was that she always ordered Jägermeister and Diet Coke, in the same glass. I once had to kick her out because she got so wasted she was giving it under one of our tables. When I could clearly see the in her mouth, she lies about what she's doing, and says she is looking for something. Story 6. A pretty dodgy woman came into the pokies room in our venue gambling slot machine equivalent that we have in Australia, and demanded for us to find an outlet for her to plug in her charger for her phone. So we found her a machine near an outlet and left her to her devices. Later one of our staff was waved down by another stressed patron, who said that a woman was moaning in the pokies room. Went in to find out she'd actually plugged in a vibrator and was going to town on herself in front of everyone. Story 7. A heavy-set Middle Eastern man was drinking heavy and got very drunk at my bar. When he went to the restroom his prime rib dinner had arrived. I think he shot up some smack in the stall cause when he came back way drunker. He then cut a long big strip of prime rib, about the size of a thick hot dog, then while glaring at me, threw his head back and proceeded to swallow it whole like a baby would a worm from its mother. It of course got stuck in his throat choking him and he passed out and fell on the floor. We cleaned out his air passage and gave him CPR. 10 minutes passed and he was still unconscious when the paramedics arrived. He left with a heartbeat but died later that night in the hospital. Story 8. Gordon Ramsay walked in, ordered a 12-sized margarita, and told me it was perfect after he finished it. He was a gentleman and even bowed and said thank you on the way out. I later learned they were filming an episode of Kitchen Nightmares around the corner and he knew the chef who owned the restaurant where I was bartending. He came in the next night too. I had a convo with Gordon Ramsay 2 days in a row. Story 9. Lots of funny things at New Year when everyone is in fancy dress. Sad older guys who have drank so much they haven't noticed their wig has slipped. The weirdest is definitely having a mariachi band burst in through the door of the pub, play 2 songs and leave. Keep in mind this is the UK, it was a dark rainy midweek night. I don't know where they came from or where they went after, but while they played they had the attention of everyone in the pub. Story 10. This happened on my first Friday night. There was 2 French women mid to late 20s having a good night. Very chatty to the staff even though it was busy, but that quite nice and refreshing for a busy night. This one large sweaty guy makes his way to the bar and orders a drink while standing between these 2 women. As he overhears their accent he asks, "Are you 2 French?" The ladies reply politely and continue talking between them. This guy pulls down his pants all the way to his ankles and says, "In that case, welcome to Scotland baby," while making solid eye contact with me looking for approval. At this point one of the girls grabs the guys and then starts pulling him out of the pub like he's a disobedient dog, and the pure look of regret and embarrassment on the guy's face was priceless. She was really pulling with all her force and the guy was just trying to stay in one piece. The other girl finished her drinks, tipped us all very well, thanked us for a great night and swiftly left. As she opened the door I heard a faint yell of, "But it was funny, right?" Story 11. One lady older, mid-50s walked up to 2 younger guys, barely 21, and said I got big hands and a tight. I had to tell her to leave them alone. She was very drunk there regularly. Story 12. Former bartender here, worked at a serious dive for 5 long years. Once had a crack addict covered in prison tattoos explain to me why it's better to shoot heroin into your penis than into your neck. I am a woman, no penis to shoot heroin into here. He was actually kind of a good dude in his way. He taught me how to stop people who were smoking crack in the bathroom without having it get rough for me. The trick was politely yelling from the hall to the washroom, "Hi, I know you're smoking crack in there, but if you could please leave I won't call the cops, thank you." And honestly it worked like a charm. I also once served a very large woman with some pretty decent stubble and her man friend, who was cross-eyed and kinda smelt like pee. They were sitting at a booth at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and she was taking shots, which are topped with whipped cream and you're not supposed to use your hands to drink. Each time I brought her one she lifted her breasts, one by one, and placed them on the table so that she could lean over them to reach the shot glass on the table with her mouth. By shot number 3 or 4 she had whipped cream in her whiskers and her man friend was leaning across the table to stroke her face and say I love you. Honestly, I actually think the moral of that story is that there's someone for everyone. And that's kinda sweet. I have more stories about Cracky McPrison tats and tons of stories about that bar in general. It was deeply, deeply unsafe, but also kind of a gig I loved. And I met some people I still consider my closest friends. Story 13. I have so many stories of the same guy who we only knew as Soljamon. Soljamon was as he referred to himself in Black Irish. He was not black nor Irish. He was about 52 and also would say he was from the island. He did have a very strong Caribbean accent, but who knows what island. He came into the small music venue, mainly metal, that I worked at every single Friday and Saturday like clockwork. He tipped super well and was usually nice to the staff, but the second he walked in the clock started until he would have to be cut off and kicked out. It was always fairly harmless and depending on the right crowd was hilarious to watch, so we never banned him, but more often than not he would off someone, usually the band, and we would have to remove him. I will try to list as many examples as I can remember. He would always stand as close to the lead singer as he possibly could without being on the small stage and continually gyrate his hips directly at them the entire set. The stamina alone was impressive, but definitely awkward when there's only 6 people in the venue. He would constantly yell at the band the entire time, usually compliments, sometimes complete gibberish guttural sounds. He would repeat the same lines over and over. His favorites were we love you, Soldier, Soldier. Can you guess how we named him? Wyo sexy, sexy, Wyo sexy. It did not matter who was on stage or performing for that one. Sometimes when no one was performing one specific time there was a very mellow acoustic show of acts from the local college. One girl was playing acoustic guitar and he was really going for it that night for some reason, and after she finished her song it's silent in the place with a crowd of maybe 10 to 20 people when he yells you play good, to which the crowd started clapping and agreeing. Realizing he had agreement and the crowd's attention he had to add to it now, so he finished with for a woman. He truly meant it as a compliment even though it was hilariously wrong. That one still cracks me up from a collective sigh and gasps from the entire bar. One of the times I personally told him he was cut off and had to leave, he flipped me off with both hands and put them up to his sides and Zwaberg-style sideways scooted to the door, still with both middle fingers up, and then as the bar went silent he yelled straight at me, "HY, you're a, but I love you." He then left. He would never finish more than half a beer before rushing to get another, and would always tip and then put a finger to his mouth like SHH and then tip more. I didn't understand the ritual, but I also didn't care. He would regularly say things about being a cop or something about FBI. Could never really make that one out, but he would say something about either, and then giggle like a schoolgirl. Pretty sure he had learned the words, but not what they actually meant. After we would kick him out he would walk out front, and do the loudest whistle and wave for non-existent cabs, and then stand there until one randomly drove by, when he would promptly run out in front of it to try to get a ride. Shockingly enough, this was effective about 50 of the time. He'll try to think of other stories and ask some old coworkers or friends to add. There were so many that it's hard to remember them all right now. Edit. I was just telling my brother this story, and realized I left out that he had one drifting eye and usually had a fedora on. My brother said those were key details I should add. Story 14. I worked on the bar in a restaurant but would sometimes act as the host if things got busy on the floor. A couple came in once, I sat them down, gave the menus and all that, not 10 minutes and I pick up a call and it's a woman asking to speak to the guy. I politely let him know someone's on the phone and they say it's urgent. He has a quick chat, seems okay and hangs up the phone before going back to the table. 5 minutes later, she calls again, I go over again, apologize and say they seem really concerned. At this point he's clearly tense and making an effort not to raise his voice. After a few minutes he hangs up, hands the phone back to me and says if she calls again, just tell her I'm not interested in speaking to her. Lo and behold, she calls again, and I say exactly what he asked, to which she laughs in kind of a glitch crazy ex kind of way. And you not, says well tell him I hope he doesn't eat too much because when he finds the tires I slashed he'll be walking home, wishing he'd spoken to me, and hangs up. I went over a minute later and asked what kind of car he had because there was someone double parked outside and wanted to check it wasn't him. I figured it wasn't worth freaking him out if it was an idle threat. He described the car and said where he'd parked it. I took a sig break and went to check. All 4 tires were fine, but that poor had not a single window left unsmashed or severely cracked, and there were a couple of rocks laying on the ground. Needless to say, they did not stay to finish their meal. Story 15. I was a bartender once about 20 years ago, just after college, only did it for about 3 months, but I was pretty darn good at it. I guess I already had tons of experience playing bartender at college parties, so I was already ahead of the game. Craziest experience I ever had involved a couple who I would guess were in their 40s or early 50s. From the parts of their conversation with each other I could overhear, it was obvious they were liberated, which was rare for the conservative southern town I worked in. I bartended at an upscale trendy place. We were open only Thursday through Sunday, so I usually just worked Thursday, Friday and Saturday night. Most of my pours were relatively easy for a novice bartender: bourbon on the rocks, old fashions, wine by the glass, martini, etc. One night I had a couple come in and sit at the bar. They changed my life in ways few people ever have. When I asked them what I could get them, they talked about how they just wanted to relax, try new things and not have to make any decisions that night. So, they proposed that I just make them whatever drink I wanted to make them. They told me to make observations about their personalities and just choose whatever drinks I thought they'd like. I thought they were very cool and easygoing people, so I was game to give it a shot. I had been practicing making all sorts of craft cocktails in my spare time, some that were pretty non-traditional. They each had 4 rounds. Each round I made them something a little more unique and fun. I even still remember some of the drinks from that night and actually order them now for myself from time to time. They sat and talked to each other, and since I wasn't very busy that night, they'd strike up little conversations with me from time to time. Nothing too crazy, but at one point the guy said to me she thinks her look awful in this dress, but I think they look great, don't you? This was about the same time punked was a thing, so my first thought immediately went to the idea that someone was screwing with me. I think I responded with something like, I think women are too hard on themselves. Before they left, the lady in the couple said, hey, we are having a little party at our house next week. If you aren't working, could we hire you to bartend for us for a few hours? We went back and forth for a minute as I asked them questions about particulars, who would order the booze, etc. And in the end I felt like I could handle it. So I told them I'd be happy to do it. Then the lady said one more thing, and I want to make sure you're cool with the type of party it will be. It's a sexy party and the people who will be there aren't shy. You might see some crazy stuff. I laughed it off and told them I was laid back, so nothing to worry about. As I got off work that night, I was obviously trying to envision what she was talking about. I even had a few paranoid thoughts, worrying that I had just agreed to bartend for some sort of cult, but the couple seemed nice enough, so I figured what the heck, you'll just go make a memory and risk being ritually murdered. The night of the party I got there early to prepare. The lady answered the door in a robe. It looked like she was still getting ready and hurriedly asked me to set everything up at the bar because she was running behind. I took care of it, and just sort of hung out until she finally came back in the room. She was wearing what I would describe as a very sexy dress. When I say sexy, it wasn't just for the cut and length, it was also because the top was sheer and you could see right through it. She was a very pretty lady, and I was a guy in my early 20s, so I certainly had no complaints about the view. As people started to arrive and mingle around, it was clear this was no regular party among friends. It started off innocently enough, with people arriving and mingling about chatting with each other. The only thing that was out of the ordinary was that some of the women there were dressed in things even more revealing than the lady I was bartending for, and some not dressed in much at all. It wasn't long before some of the couples were asking me, so is this the first time you've ever been a bartender at a swingers party? Blushing, I said that it was. I was also wondering what that meant, because I was too sheltered in those days to comprehend the definition of swinger at that point, but I was getting the general idea. To be honest, these were some of the nicest people I had ever met, friendly, outgoing, talkative, but also intelligent, open and engaging. They were fun. I just remember thinking to myself that they seemed very confident and self-assured. They sort of looked like any other random group of people. Diverse, all shapes and sizes, all levels of attractiveness. There were also some gay couples and singles there as well. As the time progressed, things definitely got a little crazy. I saw women making out with other women, men making out with other men, individual men and women making out with couples, people getting naked. Your imagination probably gets the idea. It was pretty wild. Anyhow, they were still going strong when my agreed to time was up. I cleaned up and headed out with a wide smile on my face. I'm sure some of you are asking, did any of them proposition you? It doesn't help the story much, but the truth is no. It was almost as if they were following some sort of code. They knew I was hired to be there and wasn't part of the group, so they were just exceptionally friendly and respectful, and they tipped very well. So you ask what was so life-changing about that? That night quickly became one of my fondest memories. I felt like a curtain had been opened for me. I grew up in a ridiculously conservative, traditional, repressed, religious culture. I had never seen anything like this party before, but more important than the sights and sounds of the party were my impressions of the people there. For a young conservative Republican traditionalist like I was at the time, this represented everything I had always been told was bad. My Southern Baptist youth group would have quickly said that all these people were headed straight to, they were, after all, living sinful, shameful lives according to everything I had ever learned. But I saw nothing bad in these people. They were delightful. More than that, they were happy and accepting. They were one of the most affirming groups of people I had ever met. They were the type of people I envied and frankly the type of people who were a joy to be around. They knew who they were, and at this party at least, they got to be themselves without worrying about a very small-minded, hateful and unaccepting world around them. That night was the beginning of my own journey of liberation. I thought about what I saw there and went through a years-long process of breaking free of the chains of my upbringing. I committed to discovering my own spectrum and opened my mind to people who differed from me. Through the years, I opened myself to all sorts of experiences I wouldn't have otherwise ever considered, and I married a woman who was extremely supportive of that and who also came from a similar background as mine. Together we've explored our sexuality and our lives and marriage are better for it today. We feel like whole people. I never ran into anyone from that night at any other point in my life, but if any of them are reading this today I want to say thank you. Thank you for who you are and for living your truth unashamedly. Thank you for showing this young guy that in sexuality are good things to be explored and encouraged, not things to be ashamed of. In my adult life I've become an advocate for the LGBTQ community, a supporter of workers' rights and a believer in body positivity and positivity. If it hadn't been for the people at that party that night, I might have never been exposed to something that was incredibly mind-opening and life-changing. Little do they know, but they were the catalyst for opening me to a lot of things that are very meaningful in my life now. They introduced me to an experience that inspired me to think differently, and for that I'll always be in their debt. Edit. Thank you so much for the gold. This is my first ever gold on Reddit. I've lurked here for probably 10 years now, and I only created a profile and started posting very recently. I never imagined I'd get to make one of these thanks for the gold edits, but it sure feels great. You've made my day. Edit 2, now platinum. You guys are amazing. I would have never dreamed my little story would turn into this. Thanks to all of you for the awards. You really brought a brightness to my day. Story 16 used to bartend at a strip club, so I definitely saw some weird things. The ones that stick out the most include 1, bartending in VIP and a guy refused to pay the girls for the hours. VIP host, who was also a former fighter, asked the guy to pay. Guy gets belligerent, calls him a slur and spits in the host's face. Host hits him once, KO. Guest comes to, stands up and spits blood at everyone and is escorted out. Dancers brought the teeth they found to me at the bar. Not sure what I was supposed to do with them. 2, watched as one unique dancer, who typically communicated via meows, slowly sip her drink as a guest licked and smelled her armpit. 3. Served Dennis Rodman a shot Jägermeister, only for him to walk away from the bar as though he didn't have to pay, chased him down, and a dancer paid for it instead. Edit format and to change TKO to KO so Gozer is happy. Story 17 not a bartender but work at a place with a bar. This husband and wife sat at the bar when another man came in and demanded the woman get up and move. The husband defended his wife and said they got there first and there were other open chairs at the bar the stranger could sit at. The man proceeded to verbally threaten the couple's lives before pulling out a gun. My manager called the cops and informed the man that the cops would be there in less than a minute because they patrolled the shopping center constantly. So the man ran out the front door and tried to escape on foot, but police saw a man running with a gun in his hands out in public away from a restaurant where a man had just pulled a gun on someone and arrested him. My manager had to go with the police to the police station to identify the man and give a statement. It was the wildest thing that's ever happened to me at work. Story 18 a lady came in and very casually asked for a pack of Camel Crush and a glass of milk. I asked her if she wanted ice in it as it was a hot Texas summer day. She said no, then went out to the patio to smoke her cigs and drink her milk. Story 19 when I went out to the smoking area to clear some glasses and checking intoxication, a big red flag that these two people that have had enough and needed to leave was this guy fingering the girl he was hooking up with in the now. I know what you're thinking. How would I see him actually slipping a finger in? Well, her was half out and about 7 customers had their eyes popping out of their heads the whole time. This was also in the smokers area which was out the front of the pub and on the main road of the town I lived in. Story 20 I caught a guy jerking off in the dart room one slow Tuesday night. It was last call and I was moving the floor mats to mop behind the bar when I saw him, with his back to me making a off motion in the dart room. I assumed he was making a gesture at someone like a joke or something, so I ignored it, until I walked by again and he still do it. I walk up and there he is, hog out, totally hard jerking off staring at the 2 couples of kids finishing their dart game. What the dude was all I could think to say. He tried to hide his and replied, I'm on a bunch of Molly, I'm sorry, I'm waiting for my girlfriend. I just threw my hands up and said you have 5 seconds to get the out of this bar. I don't want to bounce a dude with a, he ran away. I walked up to the 2 couples and said why didn't you tell me he was doing that? They said they felt that he was being weird but didn't look over cause he was making them uncomfortable. Unreal. I tell the story to everyone and after describing his appearance multiple people confirm that he has done this at other places and gotten away with it. Fast forward a couple years and I'm working at a different bar. A customer is like, hey dude, some guy is in here with a. I look around the room and there he is off guy with a again. I just scream across the bar, get the out of here guy, and he ran out. Bar patrons, if someone is making you uncomfortable or jerking off in the bar please alert the staff. Edit people are saying I should have called the cops. Okay, he's obviously a criminal and this behavior needs to be stopped. In my defense, the first time I was in shock, and the second time in behind a bar across the room, I never really got a chance. You never know how you'll react to an unsolicited hard until you're confronted by one. I'm not chasing off guy down the street. And if the cops won't show up for brawls, people threatening coworkers, or wrestling knives out of homeless guys' hands, they probably won't show up for off guy. I was a bartender in NZ a few years back, and some dude attending a work function lit his own face on fire with a flaming shot. He lit it, then shot it, but poured a bunch of it on his face at the same time. Afterwards he didn't want to go to the hospital, he wanted to keep partying, so I got him some burn cream from the kitchen. Every time he came back to the bar after that, the blisters forming on his face were bigger, juicier, and nastier. That story trumps another time when I came across a dude getting a BJ in the corner of the balcony. While I was packing up after WED closed I let them finish. Story 21 I can take the cake here. Worked a private party. Supposedly 75 to 100 people are going to be arriving. Host family shows up, probably about a dozen or so extended family members, toting a cake. Party start time comes and goes. No more guests are arriving. After about an hour I talk to my manager. All WTF did you call me in for? This isn't a party at all. I end up talking to the host family. And the main mom starts crying that nobody wanted to celebrate with the birthday girl. I got sad, and asked who the birthday girl was, so at least I could buy her a big drink on the house. Mom responds she's dead. She died a few months ago. She then proceeds to weep uncontrollably for a very long awkward time. I worked a birthday party for a dead woman, nobody else ever showed, and we made food for 50, and had food prepped for another 50. I made almost no money that night. My boss did allow me to get hammered in the house after they left, however. Story 22. A lady who shat herself so violently in our bathroom and then passed out she had diarrhea in the cracks of her toes. Tried to give me a hug when I had to remove her from the stall. Feel bad for the friend who had to drive her home. A guy used to drop bags of kittens off on the highway near our restaurant, and one summer we had an army of stray cats that would run up to people's tables on the patio and take their food. The sheriffs finally caught the guy. His wife was a crazy cat lady with dozens of cats, and he would wear an actual ghillie suit and bring the litters through the woods to the highway. There's only one left, but he's a dumpster cat and he's been there longer than most of the employees at this point. His name is the Old Man. One time a vent in our bar started billowing out smoke towards the end of the night, so we had to evacuate the building and call the fire department. On her way out, one woman stopped me asking if she could make reservations near the band the next weekend. We don't take reservations near the band. She knew that, and the restaurant was literally on fire. I said, feel the room, lady. And there's more, but those are the three that come to my mind. A couple brought their mentally disabled son to the bar for a band night for his 30th birthday, and the band ended up being an 80s cover group with a trippy light show. The kid had an epileptic seizure on the dance floor during a Journey song, and I am so bad at handling situations like those without laughing. Whenever someone gets hurt or it's an overwhelming awkward situation, I couldn't return the bar for a couple minutes. We booked a band one Saturday night who was a really big reggae star in the area. As the dude was setting up my manager, and I noticed it was eerily dead for the evening as the band was just about to start, so we went out to smoke. The woods behind the restaurant had a thick fog coming out of it, and we were noticing how odd that was considering it was a really warm and clear night in July. Then we saw them. Groups of stoners with dreads and beanies emerging from the tree line. It wasn't fog in the woods, it was marijuana smoke. We didn't sell that many drinks that night, but I remember the cooks complaining about the amount of mac and cheese they sold. Story 23. The ice well could be reached on both the bar side and the cocktailer side. A nurse pulls a bar seat up next to it and puts her foot in it while bitching about how rough her shift was. I saw it happen and literally cussed her out, like the is your problem. It was a busy Saturday night and now we had no ice well in the bar and my barback had to stop what he was doing to drain and clean the well. And I just got buckets of ice and put them in the bar in the meantime, but they had to be refilled pretty regularly in comparison to the larger well, and now we had these buckets in our way. She tries to come in again like a month later, and I immediately recognized her and told her to off before I call the hospital she works at, and lets them know how she deliberately put her feet in a place that would contaminate everyone else's drinks. She tried to yell at me saying that was slander. I said the cameras would prove otherwise. I quit there some months later, and my old barback got promoted to bartender. He texted me like 6 months after saying she tried to come in again and he recognized her and let her come in, but then told all her friends that were with her what happened all. Story 24. Worked a bar right downtown on a very main SD in a very open and visible setting. Middle-aged wealthy-looking guy comes in, orders a pint, no problems, gets the pint, walks back out the door, probably gonna smoke, hang out outside, whatever, gets back into his car and immediately pulls it and drives off. He did it so fast and with such confidence like it was a Big Mac and we were McDonald's, full pint in a glass. It was hilarious and weird. Story 25. It was a Tuesday night and we were closing at midnight. A group of about 6 gentlemen came to my bar, seemingly intoxicated but overall pretty friendly. Small talk revealed they are mostly from the Portland area and are here undisclosed location near the Philadelphia area for their best friend's wedding tomorrow. The one guy asks for a shot of the most expensive tequila we have, that is Clase Azul Anejo at $150 a shot. He says he'll take it. So I run downstairs. This occurred on a rooftop bar, grab the bottle and all the fancy stuff to go with it, perform my lil presentation in front of him, and he grabs the snifter filled with 150 worth of our best tequila and says, okay boys, circle up. Without missing a beat, as if it were choreographed, the 6 guys get in a circle and start flapping their arms positioned like chicken wings from the chicken dance. Crouch down, and start chirping like baby birds. Guy 1 then takes the shot and spits it into Guy 2's mouth, Guy 2 into Guy 3's mouth, and so on until it reaches Guy 6, who receives and swallows the now certainly warm and slimy shot like a champ. Found out afterward they were all on shrooms, but coolest I've ever seen. Woulda comped a shot if I had the power. Hope those boys are doing well. Story 26. Former bartender. Weirdest. Probably the guy with one leg asking me if I wanted to him. He said a lot chicks get off on stumps. I have a few other things, but it's not worth thinking about. Being a bartender made me realize how much I dislike most people. A more weirdly serendipitous moment was on a Halloween night when I was closing up and forgot to lock the front door. A very tall man stumbled in with vomit on the front of his shirt. I kept telling him he had to leave multiple times, that I was closed. Then he drunkenly takes off his mask and lo and behold, it was one of my friends from grade school. Real Scooby-Doo moment. Story 27. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm so late. Backstory: I am from backwoods Mississippi and was working in the city closest to my hometown at the time. Lots of forest areas that are super isolated. I was bartending, alone, Sunday morning at a brewery. I had one ornery regular that had come in, one random lady who wore headphones and had her back to me. In this dude rolls from his SUV, illegally parked, wearing a plaid button-up that had sleeves that were both different colors from the body, and on each shoulder 2 huge Bigfoot emblems. I told the man I liked his shirt because it was a cool shirt. He said, I've seen it, because I have a goofy old man for a dad. I laughed, and he said, no seriously, I've seen it, I've seen the Bigfoot. The regular choked on his drink. This man proceeds to tell me all about the Bigfoot he's seen for like half an hour. It's near my parents' home, actually right near where my brother is buried apparently. I ask him about what parts he saw it specifically, he has no details. Just assured me that his friend showed him, and also that he'd seen little ones, as well no more than 3 feet tall. Then he said he had more shirts to show me and went and got them from his car. This is where the regular chugged the rest of his beer, said, "Sorry kid, I can't deal with him," and left me there. He comes back in, and tells me all about his plans. In the back of his SUV, some weird contraption. You could only see it when he opened the door. Turns out, it was a Bigfoot cage. His plan, and I swear to God this was verbatim, was to catch it, and then call all the news stations and journalists and bloggers and media, let them get their pictures and stories and videos, and then let him go because he doesn't belong in a cage. And then he asked me if he could buy concert tickets. We were not a concert venue and left without purchasing anything at all. I was so sad that no one had experienced it with me until the girl from the table turned around and was like, I unplugged my headphones as soon as he walked in and listened to all of that, and oh my God.